is going to teach us how to create an ice pack, right?
So if you
just believe it, knew it from the start.
Well, good morning, DocPreneur Nation. My name is Michael Tetreault, editor of Concierge Medicine Today and host of the DocPreneur Leadership Podcast. And our special guest today is Dr. Brook Choulet, and she is with Choulet Wellness, and you can go to chouletwellness.com. It's CHOULET wellness.com. We'll put it in the show notes below. But before we begin with Dr. Choulet, I want to let you know that as a talking point for your patients today, something that we try to share like is a funny quip, a little tip when you walk inside of the exam room to get the ball rolling. Did you know that California is the artichoke capital of the world? I didn't know that. Did you know that, Dr. Choulet?
I did not know that.
I know the funny things we learn when we listen to podcasts. So, Dr. Brook Choulet, thank you for being our guest today. You are a little bit of a unique practice model in the Scottsdale, Arizona area, right on the border there of Paradise Valley. Tell us what specialty you're in and what you're doing in concierge medicine.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here. I am a psychiatry specialist, so I went to residency training in general psychiatry, and I'm currently in my child and adolescent psychiatry fellowship, and I own Choulet Wellness, which is a concierge psychiatry practice in addition to kind of a whole center of wellness specialists.
So before we move into the world of concierge medicine, your practice, and you discuss the business side of that, the entrepreneurial things that you had to learn. Tell us a little bit about your background. How did you become interested in healthcare? What drew you to serve the patients in your area?
Sure. So pretty much from the day I was born, I was raised in a household with my mom, who's a child and adolescent psychiatrist, as well as my mom's father. My grandpa is also a child and adolescent psychiatrist. So I was kind of surrounded by psychiatry from birth. I grew up seeing how my mom and grandpa were able to have such a large impact on people's lives. And it really drew me to the field because I like the continuity of care with outpatient and seeing people grow with personal growth and development over time. So it made me really excited about the field of psychiatry. And I knew pretty much going into medical school that that is what I wanted to do. I did go to a unique program where it's a 6-year Bachelor MD straight out of high school. So I left San Diego and went to Kansas City, Missouri, where I spent 6 years all year round with no vacations during my medical school and finished up in 6 years.
Wow. And then the move over to Arizona from there, what kind of led you into that area?
Sure. So I was trying to get a little bit closer back to home from Missouri, and my family is in San Diego. So I looked at programs in California, Arizona, various places on the West Coast, and really loved the program here in Phoenix. So I came out here and matched through the residency match program to the University of Arizona College of Medicine, Phoenix.
Wow. And besides seeking relief and mental stress from the heat out there, what led you into bumping into this idea of concierge medicine?
Sure. So I really like having a close relationship with my patients where they feel secure to contact me at any time. I like kind of the continuity of care over time rather than going to a clinic and seeing a different prescriber during each visit. So I think, seeing how my mom was able to grow such a rewarding concierge practice over time really drew me to wanting to do that here in Scottsdale.
And is talk a little bit about, her experience. You've got to see that firsthand of that kind of very personal relationship with patients. From a mental health perspective, what's the difference between a primary care, family medicine, physician-patient relationship and the mental health relationship on the psychiatry concierge model?
Sure. I think that, one thing to kind of clarify is that concierge medicine isn't just for primary care physicians and pediatricians. And our kind of psychiatric model of concierge medicine really integrates the well-being of the body and the mind. And I think that, it's a much more almost vulnerable patient position to be in, coming in talking about the biggest stressors and the hardships of life, rather than talking about more kind of objective, like I have a rash, or I have hypertension. So it's a lot more vulnerable, I guess, that people are coming in with their kind of story, different backgrounds and stories.
And there was a story, that's how one of the things we were able to bump into each other and how we've met here. And, today seeking help for mental health issues can seem like, I liked your analogy here, like an extreme sport with all of the scheduling conflicts, the long wait times, and the general stress that comes with it. But a concierge psychiatry practice is a new type of medical practice that offers people support from the comforts of their own home or through mobile communication. What would you say to the current environment of the mental health state, and how is this how is this doing something unique and different in your community?
Sure. So I think a lot of mental health clinics, they have, like I said, a lot of different prescribers. There's constantly change out of psychiatrists or, the staff and things like that. And it can almost feel insecure at times because you don't really know what you'll get. And I really like to provide a kind of comfortable, non-judgmental environment in terms of the concierge care, with easy kind of electronic and relatively immediate access to the physician, which is me at Choulet Wellness. I wanted to develop a very kind of accessible mental health care model for people. The people I see are very high functioning, they have busy schedules. And so, a lot of people don't have time to wait on hold for the front desk person to connect them to someone or to get answers about their refill. So also, I think the access to care kind of improves compliance because they don't go without meds for a few days. There aren't, some of those communication barriers you get with a general mental health clinic. And my patients know that they can contact me directly on my cell phone at any time.
And I think the scratching question in most physicians who are listening mind, or the patients who are listening, is, what is your availability? Because I hear doctors talk about, in general, plan reimbursed practice models that we're all unfortunately used to, running with bureaucracies and riddled with wait times and clipboards and those glass screened windows. Are you really that accessible? How does walk us through a typical day that you might have with patients?
Sure. So typically, if I'm seeing patients in the office, I schedule time between them. And that also gets to the point of when you see high profile patients, I want to make sure that kind of they can go in and out without other patients seeing them. So I tend to leave some gaps during that time. I'll return text messages or phone calls to people. They can also access me through the patient portal. I also get text messages sometimes in the evening from patients wanting to kind of share something that happened or a new stressor. So I try to make myself as readily available as possible. And with that, I do carry a smaller caseload of patients so that I'm able to accommodate their needs.
And do you feel like you have had to kind of have a guard up around some, or have patients been respectful? And I say that because in the typical concierge medicine model that most physicians are aware of in family medicine, concierge, and in primary care, and even some in cardiology, we do find that patients are very, very respectful of the physician's schedule. Like, oh, I meant to, I was going to call you, but I didn't want to call you like, at 5:30. I thought I would call you during the day when it is convenient for you. Talk to us a little bit about the respectfulness or the boundaries that you might have had to have placed on some.
Sure. Yeah, I think boundaries is a perfect word because sometimes you do have to set boundaries with certain patients. But, I tend to really screen patients before I take them on to make sure I am a good fit for them, because a lot of times people might need a community mental health center where they have a case manager and a therapist and a psychiatrist and a whole kind of team of people behind them in the community. But so then with concierge care, it's really, I tend to see a lot of high functioning professionals who also have their own busy schedules. They don't want to be calling and texting me all the time. And I do find that they're very respectful of my time.
And you do, our guest today is Dr. Brook Choulet of Choulet Wellness. You can go to Choulet, Choulet wellness.com. We'll put the links and how you can get in touch with Dr. Brook Choulet in the show notes below. But you also have an expertise leaning into child and adolescent development. And we have talked with a couple of different concierge psychologists and psychiatrists over the last couple of years about the effect of devices and homeschooling and pandemic schooling and all this types of things. There are a lot of things that are hitting our kids right now. And as as an expert in this field, what advice do you have for doctors trying to help parents that they know are struggling with kids in these types of difficult situations with overuse of devices, not getting the education that they need, but it's through technology, good and bad? What's some of your thoughts on that big picture topic?
Sure, I definitely have seen more of a struggle from kids and parents, like you mentioned, with kids being frustrated with having to sit at a computer and basically sit still, which is very difficult for kids who are in the ages of single digits, as well as parents experiencing frustrations with their kids being frustrated with the online school. And I think the biggest takeaway I usually tell parents is to be mindful of perspective and put yourself in your kid's shoes. And if they're acting out, it's, probably a result of frustration and, not being happy with the current situation, and they're not getting the social exposure that they need. And a lot of times now, since they're at home, they are playing more games and video games, and then irritability goes up. And so there's a whole kind of domino effect that's happened with kids being at home more, not being able to participate in their activities as usual, not being able to go to summer camps, and especially here in Arizona, we really struggle with the summer times because kids can't really go outside when it's 110 or 120 degrees.
Wow, that is a good point. And our guest today is Dr. Brook Choulet of Choulet Wellness, chouletwellness.com. And she has a unique practice model in concierge psychiatry, which offers people the support, the comfort, the necessary connection that they need to a qualified expert in mental health. And before we jump into the topic of entrepreneurship and docpreneurship and what your exploratory journey in this, speak to the physicians who are out there that they know that they have patients that struggle with mental issues. Maybe it's Alzheimer's, and it can often be one that they're quick to refer off to another professional. It's tough to find the doctor's doctor. And what advice do you have for those dealing with this and saying, I want to make sure that I get I would want my son, my daughter, my mom to go to this doctor. How do PCPs, even in concierge medicine, how do doctors that, if you were speaking to a peer group at a conference of just doctors, where would you say to go? How would you say to get connected? Would you say develop a relationship with those experts in your field of mental health in your community, get to know them, because there's good ones and there's great ones? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely am a huge fan of networking with the community, knowing what resources are out there, because it's part of what makes you a better doctor when your patient's saying like, oh, I'm struggling, if they're talking to their PCP with mental health, they're like, I think my son might have ADHD, being able to be a source of support and a resource for them, and being able to readily say like, oh, here are my top 3 recommendations. I I really think that comes with networking with the community, setting up appointments with people. When I first started in this space, I met with everyone I could and really asked, like, what makes your practice great? And, tell me about yourself. And I really wanted to get to know the people behind the businesses rather than just the services that they were offering. And that way, when someone comes to me and they might have a GI issue, if they are having anxiety, I know exactly who the GI doctor is that I'd want to send them to. So I think knowing the resources in the community is invaluable, not only to yourself, but to your patients.
And for those patients listening, you understand that a patient who feels appreciated will always do more than is expected. And we just, I always say, I'm not a physician, but I am a patient. So I know what it's like to sit on the other side of you.
Right.
And it's rough out there as a patient. It's rough out there as a physician. You put on this impossible burden every day, and we armor up as patients too. And there was a study from the Havas group about a year or so ago, and it said that of the brands, from a business perspective, of the brands that we connect with and use every single week, if those brands disappeared, how many of you would feel as a consumer impacted by those brands disappearing? And over 7 out of every 10 consumers who are utilizing those brands that you and I use every single day, big box brands, small box brands, niche brands, 7 out of 10 said, I wouldn't care if they disappeared. It really wouldn't impact my life. And when we dovetail that same question, if your doctor closed at the end of this week and sent you that letter and said, I'm going out of business, or I'm retiring, whatever, over 8 out of every 10 patients that you and I bump into outside the 4 walls of our offices today would say, okay, not really a big deal because I didn't have a relationship with them either way. How important is that relationship to you when you started this business? And we're about to dovetail into some entrepreneurial, your business side of this
Right.
medicine.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why I started this business. I think one thing, when even, doctors are on the patient end of things sometimes, going to a office and having someone ask you questions while they're just looking at a computer is really hard. It makes you feel like you're just another kind of piece of their day and there's no kind of personal connection. And I could see why people would answer that question that way, that they wouldn't really it wouldn't be the end of the world if their doctor quit and they had to go find someone else, because that connection isn't really established a lot of the times. Now, that's not to say there aren't good doctors out there. There's tons of great doctors. It's just, the reason I opened this practice, especially in psychiatry, is because I promised myself I will never look at a computer during an appointment. I am always looking directly at my patients. I write with pen and paper. I am not distracted by electronics, because I think that's part of what makes it so impersonal sometimes, is just like you're not even having eye contact with that physician. So for me, I think that's why I really wanted this approach of longer visit times and less patients, so I could really do what I wanted to do for each patient.
And our guest today is Dr. Brook Choulet of Choulet Wellness, and she is our concierge.
Let the notes flow, it's a symphony. Now I can say things differently.
It's a really great thing. You've got an idea, you've got a medical practice, you've got patients who come in and out, but that thing that you want to do called concierge medicine, there's a learning curve to it. Do you want to accept insurance? Do you want to participate in Medicare? Do you want to do a hybrid practice? What's your staff going to look like? Are you going to incorporate different tests inside of the office? And if you're interested in me speaking a little bit of truth to you, and sometimes it's not as easy as we think. We want somebody to just say, oh yeah, you can do this right away. It'll take you like a week. Sometimes we don't really want to hear that. There's the learning curve to this. And the speakers that you're going to hear, the presentations and courses that you have access to within this community are here designed especially for you. Please, Brook Choulet of Choulet Wellness, and she is our a concierge psychiatrist. And we're going to dive into now the business side of medicine, the business side of your practice. Excuse me. So we'll start out by, you actually have we talked off air that you actually have a background in real estate. and that kind of piqued your interest into some other areas of business that gave you a unique perspective. Talk to us a little bit about how that helped you into your entry into concierge care.
Sure. So, initially I thought that I would open just kind of a one office, like I'm sitting in now with just myself and my patients. And then I started getting into real estate last year. Actually, I got my Arizona real estate license and started doing some side work and investment properties and things like that for myself and for other friends of ours. And then I started thinking about the type of kind of care that I wanted to provide people. And I wish that there was a space where people could come and not only see me, but then do all the things that I preach to patients, which is like self-care and self-love and mindfulness and things like that. So it led me to kind of think about how I could present that to the community here, because there isn't a psychiatrist's office here that offers a whole kind of menu of other wellness services. There are a lot of med spas in Scottsdale, but there certainly isn't a wellness center, which is focused on kind of the well-being of the mind and body, which led me to kind of want to expand and pursue an expansion of Choulet Wellness, which is currently taking effect and will be moving into that larger space this fall.
And let's talk a little bit about the importance of your community, because the demographics, the research, the audience, that's going to determine whether you succeed or fail. I mean, you can be the greatest, equipped from a degree perspective physician, but if you're in a market that just won't support this, then you need to move. You're not going to grow anywhere. You need to go to work somewhere else. How important, and what did you find in the demographics? What were you looking for or uncovering throughout your exploratory process? Because we do find that the planning part of entering concierge medicine is so critical. If you don't ask the right questions, you don't ask a lot of questions. We see a lot of doctors move into things like direct primary care so quickly, and then they learn as they go, and it can be kind of problematic and very financially costly. So what were you learning and unpacking in your exploratory process in concierge medicine?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things. One is that, you have to be a type of person that people want to come to, especially if you are doing concierge medicine, developing that relationship with patients where they really understand that you really care about them and you're listening to them, I think is critical. So my hope, initially is that my approach to psychiatry will really kind of bring that population to me, because I am offering such a kind of high level of psychiatric care compared to some of the general clinics that are just overwhelmed by volume. And then in terms of demographics, the biggest question to me initially is, does this already exist? And so I did a lot of research to see, like, does a psychiatric and wellness center already exist in this area? If so, how is it doing? And I came to find out that there wasn't really one. And as starting a business, you kind of wonder, will this work? And will people want to use this? But I have such a passion for bringing this to this area that I'm confident that people will find the value in our services.
And in selecting your niche, which is concierge psychiatry, but backing out of concierge for a minute in just psychiatry, what type of resources were there for you? And you can start back maybe in school, or actually exiting school as well. You can talk about those different phases. What resources were out there for you to actually start the business, register the name, look for a trademark, all that fun stuff that doesn't seem to be taught in business classes in the medical school environment?
Well, first of all, in my medical school, there were no business classes. Like, not one business class did I ever get in medical school or residency training or fellowship. It's just, something I wish was there, but really isn't. In terms of the business end of things, it was just a lot of self-learning. So I spent hours researching, how do you make an LLC? What is an LLC? What's an EIN number? Why do I need a tax ID? All of these kind of questions that you go through as you go through the fun times of trying to create a business. And I am proud to say I actually did all of those myself. I never initially hired a CPA to do my LLC. I created all of those on my own. And that was because I really wanted to be self-taught and not rely on other people, and know that I could do them myself.
Let's back into that too. And that is surrounding yourself with some experts, some voices, and maybe, they're not just collegial peer voices who are also in psychiatry. They're voices, your spouse. We say, we said this a lot, and we hear this a lot from our interviews with physicians. Is physicians will say, if your spouse isn't on board with you entering concierge medicine, like, don't do it. Like, just wait until they come around.
Right.
Parent involvement. Your mom and your parents had a good influence on you as far as understanding what a concierge medicine model is all about. But then there's business advisors. There's, real estate folks you got to listen to. What voices were speaking positively, and what were some of the things that maybe were more critical, but actually, coached you, helped you, like, oh, it's a good thought.
Yeah, so I definitely, like you said, family is a huge support system, because if you don't have a spouse supporting you, or you don't have your family supporting you, it's very hard to go that road alone. So, I met my husband actually while I was in residency here in Phoenix, and that's the reason I stayed here instead of going back to San Diego, part of it. And, I think that he has been extremely supportive of what I want to do. My family has been. And then there's some saying about kind of, you are the sum of your four closest friends. And I'm really lucky that, I have other really savvy kind of friends, some older, some my age, that have really been there as a support and kind of a mentor. And then it's always, like you said, great to have a team of experts behind you. So lawyers, CPAs, things like that, that will help you with the business end of things and the structure. So if you have a question, you can kind of contact them and know that you're doing things the right way. And then lastly, I contacted a lot of psychiatrists out of state who had come up with a similar type of practice. And I talked to one in Florida and on the East Coast, and really kind of asked, what were the struggles you went through? What were some things that went really well? Looking back, what are some things you wish you could change? And luckily, I met a lot of really receptive people who were willing to take their time and talk to me about those things.
And our guest today is Dr. Brook Choulet of Choulet Wellness. We'll put the website address, how to connect with Dr. Choulet, in the show notes below. What were some of the, I guess, membership enrollment structures that you wanted to put into place that created something unique for you, something unique for your patients, that, wasn't just the typical mental health care provider
Right.
hamster wheel type of thing that they're used to?
Yeah, I think that is what makes us the most unique, is that even though I'm a concierge psychiatrist, I don't charge a retainer. I do not charge a retainer or a monthly membership fee. I don't really believe in that, because I think that people should be able to have kind of an hourly fee for service approach. It gives the patients more autonomy about the frequency of their visits, the duration of their care and visits, and really gives them more kind of autonomy to decide how they want their care to be. So I actually don't charge retainers. I don't take a deposit. It's really just kind of pay as you go.
And if, in looking back over the course of this past year, not in taking out of the fact that it was a pandemic, and that's not really part of this conversation, but from a business perspective, what are you proud of, a really proud decision that made you like, I'm so glad I did that? And then there's one that's maybe like a little humbling, that you're like, yeah, I would have rethought something like that.
Yeah, I think the decision I'm most proud of would be the decision to expand, just from kind of being me and myself in this business. So working on expanding, we'll have almost a 3,000 square foot space in Paradise Valley with about 8 offices, where I can bring in 7 other specialists in their respective fields to really build a comprehensive wellness center. So I'm most proud of that, and the ability to kind of offer a one-stop shop to the community for their mental health care. And then, I will say I probably haven't encountered something yet where I'm like, oh, I wish I did things a different way. I've been happy with the way things are going, and I've really poured my heart and soul into this project because I want to offer this kind of care in Scottsdale.
And let's put you in front of now a new graduating class of, psychiatrists, maybe some pharmacists, maybe some MDs and DOs in the space, or not in this space, but you're in front of a younger audience and they're looking to you for wisdom from the stage. What's one or two pieces of advice that you would give them as up and coming, like, hey, this is a good career opportunity for you. Don't neglect it just because of the brand name, even though it's changed a lot and it's amazing.
Right. Yeah, I think that one thing that medical school and residency teaches you is how to be kind of an employee in a large healthcare system. And like I said, there's not a lot of business classes about how to start your own practice and things like that. So one piece of advice I would certainly say is don't be afraid to go out on your own. It may be really scary at times and you may second guess it a lot, but if it's something you're passionate about, you'll make it work and you'll find the people who will kind of be your resources and be your kind of team of experts behind you. And that, don't be afraid to start working on it early. I can't say enough how important it was for me to start working on this while I was in training, because there is a lot that goes into it. And that way it's kind of set up and ready to go for when you do finish training.
What was your parents' thoughts on this when they heard for the first time, or that you signed on the dotted line of the real estate contract for the cost of the building? What was some of their thoughts like? Yes, like, I can't believe you're doing this. This is amazing. Or it's like, okay, you know what we've talked about. You know the risks. What were some of their
They
thoughts?
immediately were like, oh my God, we are so excited. You're going to do great. And they were super supportive. There was not 1 ounce of doubt in them. So that was really, really nice.
That's great. And because of the confidence that they have, and not just from their own background and seeing a model like this work in concierge medicine, but knowing that you've been well trained, well equipped as an expert in your field. Our guest today is Dr. Brook Choulet of Choulet Wellness in Scottsdale, Arizona, just near Paradise Valley. We're coming in for our rapid fire portion of the interview today with Dr. Choulet. And a couple of questions we'll start with, and you can be however brief or however long-winded you'd like to be. Let's talk about marketing techniques and approaches that you're planning to use, did use, want to use. Branding, marketing, it can kind of be a tough thing, and especially for doctors, because there's laws around it. There were laws around it. The laws are always changing around that. The whole thing of do no harm. What we talk a lot about here in concierge medicine is marrying the Hippocratic Oath with the Golden Rule. Talk a little bit about the marketing strategies that you've used. It could be just social media, it could be anything.
Sure. Yeah, I think, being on social media and having a digital presence is important, more in terms of SEO and website boosting and things like that. In terms of actually patient retention, which I'm sure a lot of doctors are interested in, I don't get many new patients yet from social media because it's such kind of a unique service I'm offering, but I do certainly think it's really important to have an online presence. It just kind of happened that through all of the attempts at networking and learning about the resources in the community. So I would be more knowledgeable for my patients. That was a really great referral source, that when I met with therapists or other doctors and really heard what they were looking for in the community, then that was a really great kind of marketing that I didn't really even intend to be marketing initially. And then things like Google Business and Psychology Today, those are all great resources as well. And really with psychiatry, there's such a need that, if you hang up a sign, people will come, but also really, targeting towards a specific kind of client base that would be good for a concierge type of model. Like you said, respecting boundaries, not needing that kind of community team behind them. So there's, it's not as easy as just marketing and then having people call, because all the people that call might not be a great fit for that type of practice.
Let's talk about your fellowship to start and the details around that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So after you go to residency for general psychiatry, you can go specialize in child and adolescent fellowship. So I'm currently in my last year there, and I am at Creighton University in Phoenix. And that is a program that, originally is from a different state, and then they kind of took over the county program here. And so now we're affiliated with Creighton.
And when you started doing the networking and building that referral resource, which you indicated that you're building that, you're meeting with folks in the community, what has been the peer-to-peer response to this model, to what you are doing? Has there been a rub? Has it been a little bit of a tension, or are they leaning in? They're like, oh, wow, like you're unique.
Right.
What's been some of those responses from different folks?
I think it's been a lot of questions because it's not really, like you said, there's not a lot of concierge psychiatrists out there. So a lot of excitement, a lot of questions, wanting to know more, how I kind of take on clients. And it kind of led me into this, side interest of a lot of physicians wanted me to coach them. So I've been coaching various physicians across the country recently about how to start a practice and kind of the business elements behind it, and giving my kind of experiences and obstacles.
Wow. And that is something that we found. We interviewed a CEO. He was also of a very large genetics company a few years ago, and he's also an MD. And we asked him, would you recommend to your peers, because most advice, it seems, bad and good, comes from peer-to-peer conversations. Hey, doc, I'm a doc too. How did you do this in your business or to grow your practice? And you back into that. Well, you just said you don't get a lot of business courses in school. So it's kind of like, well, here's what I did. Hope it works for you. That can go both ways. So getting an unofficial MBA or going back and even getting an executive MBA in business or in finance or whatever it might be as a physician is certainly helpful. Our guest today is Dr. Brook Choulet of Choulet Wellness in Scottsdale, Arizona. Couple final questions for you.
Sure.
Do your patients call you late at night? That's something that everybody's going to want to know.
Yeah, I think the latest text message I've gotten is 8 p.m. so far. Like I said, my patients are high functioning doctors, lawyers, athletes, professionals. They have lives too, and they have busy schedules, and they're very respectful of my time. And if they contact me, they'll always be like, hey, is now a good time, or can you call me when you get a chance?
Well, our second to last question is the importance of interior design. We have a whole masterclass in this for doctors. And this is something that's usually an afterthought. The same price for a commercial normal chair that you could have planted into a taupe paint on the wall practice in 1991 or 1987 is the same chair designed for the most part that you plant into a practice, an average practice in 2021 and beyond. How important was interior design in the experience of that? What does that communicate to your patients when they walk in the door?
Sure. Yeah, that for me was kind of the most exciting and fun parts of planning the new space. I think it's, one of the most important things, because when people walk in, they are going to get kind of an essence of what this space is about. And, it's the first impression. So to me, I really found it important to get really beautiful furniture and make the space look really nice. We're currently undergoing a really large renovation and taking out all the floors and doing different wall things and, all of the different kind of construction elements that go into a space. So I think it was really important for me to have a space that kind of speaks to the level of services that we're providing.
We talked with a healthcare interior designer not long ago, and she said, you can spend $700 or $1,000 on a couple of chairs, and they're ordinary chairs. They're chairs that you would find in any doctor's office today. And you could spend $700 or $1,200 on one or two chairs that come from a unique store, and when that patient sees that in your waiting room, they're like, where am I going to sit? She's got 5 minutes before she can see me. So where am I going to sit and hang out on my phone? That then creates this, like, oh man, this chair, even though it's, a $700 chair for you is a business expense, a line item, it makes that patient feel like $1 million,
Right.
and that is all part of, we say it starts, the patient experience starts in the parking lot. And there's a physician, I believe that she's out on the East Coast, doing something in primary care and family medicine, similar to what you're doing with your interior space design and buying the building and so on, and creating an atmosphere of all of these types of providers and these specialties. Is she said, I want them to be hit from the moment that they walk in the door with, like, you need to get in shape, you need to eat healthy. She put in a kitchen, she's across the hall from a gym, and she's like, I want them everywhere that they turn to be hit with the aspect of they need to do something positive for their health. So I'm glad to see that you're doing something like that. Our guest today is Dr. Brook Choulet of Choulet Wellness. We're going to put the link and the contact information for Dr. Choulet in the show notes below. Our final question, we ask this of everyone who is a guest here at the DocPreneur Leadership Podcast and Concierge Medicine today, is it's a little new to ask you this question if you were to hang it all up and hand over the keys to somebody else because you've just started. But in looking back over, this process of building, construction, build out, you're about to launch something new as well, but maybe it was that first or second or fifth patient encounter that you leave the office at the end of the day, or you hang up the phone and you say internally, like, this is why I do this. Like that one right there, like, I could die happy today because I finished the race. I accomplished the mission and the vision of what I wanted. What's one example that may come to you reference for you?
Sure. I think one example was the first time I visited the new space, and, it's not renovated or anything, but I was so excited to have a space in the exact location I wanted, offering the services I've always dreamed of. And I was just so happy leaving, knowing that, it's going to be a challenge. It's a new kind of journey. I have no idea kind of what lies ahead, but I was just really excited to finally kind of be doing, like you said, exactly what I've been waiting for.
Awesome. Well, our guest today has been Dr. Brook Choulet. She's a concierge psychiatrist, a unicorn in the space of healthcare. We're looking for great things from you and your practice. And I know your folks are very, very proud of you. I know your friends and your family are proud of you. And we can't wait to follow your journey and see how it's going very shortly. So give, before we end here, for the doctors listening, how do they connect with you? And, do you have, are you just licensed in Arizona? Can you help my patients if I'm a concierge doctor or a regular type of doctor in Florida, New York, Texas, North Dakota? Can you help me? Because you're one of the only folks I've listened to, they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for physician kind of coaching and advising things, people can always email me at bchoulet. So bchoulet@chouletwellness.com. I'm currently licensed in Arizona, and I'm pending a license in California to be able to provide telepsychiatry there as well.
And are you doing any, are you doing any mental health coaching, as far as just overall training for doctors in these other areas too? How can they lean into your expertise on that?
Sure. I'm always happy to talk with other physicians, see what the needs are in their community. Even though I'm not licensed in those states, I wouldn't be seeing patients, but I'm happy to have discussions about what's worked in Arizona.
And for my patients, if I'm a physician and I'm listening, and I know I've got snowbird patients, which is pretty common, those who travel from one destination throughout the year to another, for those who might know that, feels like an old term. Maybe there's a newer term out there. I think I've heard one. But for those patients who I do know maybe commute for a certain portion of their year back to Arizona, whether they're in Tucson or another part of the state, or they're in the Phoenix area, are you able to help them? Because I know that I can't be there all the time as their doc. could you help them too?
Right. And that's what's nice about the concierge kind of approach too, is I can work with patients on their individual needs and coordinating care with other physicians, whether it be here or elsewhere. So if people are a good fit and they're here half the year, I'm happy to see them and coordinate with their psychiatrist for when they return back home.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Choulet. We look forward to following your journey and catching up with you in the next season.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me today.
I got a feeling deep in my soul. Ain't no secret, 'cause everybody knows. I got a feeling I just can't hide. Burning brightly, you see it in my eyes.
He is going to teach us how to create an ice pack, right?
So if you
Everything's gonna be alright. Ooh, now you're making me feel. Ooh, now you're making me feel. Ooh, now you're making me feel like everything's gonna be alright. Just believe it, knew it from the start.